Hello, 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 everyone. Happy Wednesday. I'm Clairjoyance. If we haven't already met, I'm an author and small publisher committed to changing the world for the better through inclusive stories and practices. And we are jumping on today for my Authorvision Facebook Live series, where I interview the amazing and inspiring authors in my network to discuss the personal visions that have shaped our lives and careers. So if you're joining us, please like, comment, share below. Let us know that you're here. And today I'm talking to Erin.
Hi.
So glad to have you.
It's good to be here.
Yeah, so let's jump right on in. Tell me your backstory. How did you get to where you are today?
Okay. Well, I started as a teacher teaching math. So obviously that led to writing books.
Teachers, we have to tell stories in order to convey information. So to me, it makes sense.
Okay. Yes, I spent years and years getting a degree and a master's in math, and now I write fantasy stories about love. Yeah, so I taught for a while, and then I stopped teaching and had my first kid and became a stay-at-home mom. And somewhere in after the second kid, it's just like, okay, I need an outlet. I need to be doing something creative that's not just, playing with children. I love them. I love them. So I started writing in the evenings, especially like sitting outside my kid's door at night, trying to get them to sleep when they were getting out of a crib and everything. So I think I wrote my entire second book on the floor at night.
Yeah. I love
Yeah.
that.
And then it just really, I'd always wanted to write, and I tried a few times before that, and I never got past it, like that first chapter, right? Like your whole life, you're like, I got these ideas. And when you actually sit down to write it, it's it's hard.
Yeah.
And
What was that process like getting past the first chapter?
I think I just decided at one point I'm just like, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna write the book. And it did help. I made a little bit of an outline.
Mm.
And I got my brother on board because he had already written some books.
Mm.
And so what I started doing was sending him chapters
Mm.
when they were done. And then having that kind of, someone waiting for the next chapter. It's like, okay, well, I have to keep going now because I've committed to this, and he's doing it. So
Mhm.
that really helped at least get through that first draft. And it was a rough dumpster fire of a draft, but I did it, and I finished, I wrote the end, and then I rewrote the entire thing again. But, you just need to be able to, once you finish, you got that confidence, like, okay, I can do it.
Yeah. So would you put yourself more on the pantser side than the plotter side?
I would back in the day, but I am on like book 9 or 10 now, and I am embracing the zero drafts, outlines. I did not make a full outline for my current draft, and I am so mad at myself because I have a lot of revision to do. I'm like, no, outlines, do them.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I see the light.
I think you have to have a balance of both, honestly, at the end of the day. Like I personally call myself
Sure.
the plantser
Yeah.
because I do have a rough outline, but I also like to leave my characters room to surprise me because oftentimes they say stuff and I'm like, where did that come from?
But I like it.
Yeah,
For
exactly.
sure. You can't be so committed to the outline that you're not flexible to try new things. Yeah.
And I also
Sometimes
find
that
that
idea.
when you are a pantser, you do more revisions at the end because you kind of end up somewhere that you didn't expect when you initially began the project.
Yeah. That's my current draft right now. It's like if you read it from start to finish, it would you'd be like, what happened? Like you lost a character and they weren't there before. It's like, yeah, I'll fix it in post. I'm
Yeah,
gonna go back. I made a note. I made a note for edits.
yeah.
Fine. No one's reading it.
So why fantasy romance?
When I read, I like to read romance. I don't like to read necessarily romance. That's fine. I like it, but I like a story that has at least a romance subplot in
Mm-hmm.
it. And since that's what I like to read, I think that's kind of just how I started writing.
Mm-hmm.
It's not all I'm kind of all over the board these days.
Mm,
So my first series was romantic fantasy,
mm,
because the romance definitely wasn't in the main plot, but each book had a romance
mm.
of its own. But if you call it fantasy romance, people are like, that wasn't enough romance. So I'm like, okay, romantic fantasy, romantasy. And then I got more into it with the fairy tales, and now I'm kind of leaning more into, I'm going more into like a paranormal dark phase. I'm going into my vampire era, so
Yeah,
happens.
I love me some vampires. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't, you know what? I'm just gonna write until I find what works.
And why novels over like short stories or other forms of writing?
I do write short stories,
Mm,
and I do enjoy that challenge, especially if there's a theme.
mm,
I've published 4 short stories in the Quills Crow, which is like a gothic horror
mm.
online magazine. And then I've published some short stories in anthologies. And I do enjoy them because it's like, okay, I could just do whatever, something different, right? Shake it up. It doesn't have to be in my series. It doesn't have to be related. So
Mm.
I wouldn't say one or the other. I like them both. I definitely like being able to flesh out a story more, though, and not be like when you're like, oh, I got to keep it under 10,000 words. Like it never felt so hard, to keep something, the word count down. Usually you're just like, oh, I got to
Yeah.
get my words up. Short
Yeah.
stories. Oh, what can I get rid of?
Yeah. I always feel like every word counts so much more when you're at those small limits, is
Yeah.
like, how do I make this the punchiest sentence ever? And you have to think that way for every single sentence.
Yes. And for me, a lot of that comes in during my revisions and edits, but that's why I like doing them every now and then, because I really think it's a great way to sharpen your writing and kind of like, okay,
Hmm.
learn to, kill your darlings and just clean it up.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, like if I wrote like how Tolkien wrote, I'd never get anything done.
Do you mostly write short stories?
No, I do novels.
Oh, okay.
Because I need the space and time for the messages to develop. Like I don't have those. It feels like too much pressure on one sentence for
Yeah,
me to do the small word limits.
for sure. And also just making an engaging story that starts and ends so quickly,
Yeah,
right? So you don't have time to develop those characters' backstories and stuff. You just gotta, and still get right into it and still engage the reader, but again, I love a challenge.
yeah. And I find short stories are more appropriate for contemporary settings or like real world settings more so than fantasy settings.
But
Because
that helps.
you're often having to like explain the world and with it in which it's set. Like one of the best short stories that I've read was kind of like a fairy tale-ish. So I already knew kind of what we were going for into it. I wasn't really introduced to many new concepts throughout the story. And I think that that was also impactful because the framework was already familiar, you know?
Yeah, I can see that. Although to be fair, me personally, they're great stories. I'm not putting them down, but I can't get into stories that have to do like a chapter of world building and lore setting just to start the story. Like I'm just like, there's an audience for that. The people who love it, that's great. I can't read it. I can't write it. I can't read it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's the quality of skill when it comes to fantasy writers is like how they do their world building.
Yeah.
Like, do they have to spend 5 pages explaining the world up front in order for you to understand it? Or is it interwoven throughout the story and given in pieces, you know?
Yeah. I want to learn about the world as I'm reading the story. I want to be in the story, and then it kind of just naturally comes into play.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, like I feel like that's a very like Russian literature approach. Like that's why it's so verbose when you get to like Dostoevsky and all of those writers because they spent 5 pages describing a cabinet.
Hmm.
So what kept you going? What was this personal vision, this North Star, this compass that kept you going all along the way?
I think so far it's just I have too many stories left to write. I have a lot of planned whips sitting in my computer. That definitely keeps you writing. And just trying new things. Like I just did a co-author project with Hallie Reese Chow, and we wrote a book together this summer.
Mhm.
And like a YA paranormal romance, like not even like a genre that I'm promoting for myself. And
Mhm.
we're gonna send it to like her agent, or maybe go through a small publisher, and just trying new things and not just necessarily self-pubit or whatever. Like we've done projects for ourselves, but I think the collaboration was amazing. I love that. But things like doing different things like that, and I would like, I like to say I don't care, but I would like to walk into a Barnes and Noble and see my books there. I would like to see them on the center stand. I mean, who wouldn't? Like, will that happen? Maybe not, but I'd like it.
Yeah.
I don't mind if I have to write 20 books before I get there. I'll keep
Hey,
going.
I got there with 2 books, so
Right?
there's the hope for you.
A little trickier because I didn't even try querying, and I don't do traditional publishing. So making that, so it's like, I have to like be like, okay, but I'm going to have to actually take a book and try to traditionally publish it probably to get that to happen.
Well, mine was self-published.
Okay. So, but you must have done all the work to get there. Just like,
Actually, my local Barnes Noble was just looking to feature local authors.
oh, that's awesome. That's very
Mhm.
cool.
And so I did a book signing back in November for them.
Very nice.
Yeah,
Maybe someday.
yeah,
I don't
yeah. I mean,
know.
that's the goal, right? To get it on like the book talk table at Barnes and Noble.
Sure. Would I like to make a living wage from writing? Yeah, that'd be great.
Absolutely.
That'd be lovely.
Absolutely. So is this a drive to just share these stories? Like what's behind that drive? Do these stories, like what does it feel like to just have them have that need for it to come out of you? Yeah. I mean, because everyone's like, a lot of people say they have a book inside me,
Mhm.
or inside them. And so it's like, what is that process for acknowledging that desire, and B, actually following through with that desire? Because not many people get to point B on that.
That's true. Um, I mean, books inside me. I mean, I don't know. I don't know if I would like, if I stopped writing and didn't write any more books, would I explode into a million pieces of like, no, probably not. I'd find another hobby or do something else. Although this has certainly gone past hobby. I work on it almost full time. But I really enjoy when I write something and I really read back and like it, and then I share it with other people, and then getting to see their reactions to it. And
Mm.
it's very satisfying. And just,
Mhm.
I like what I like, and I like finding the other people who like what I like through my stories. And
Absolutely.
yeah, I don't know if I really have this like burning desire that you must get the book out into the world. Maybe not, but I really like doing it. So
Yeah, yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, I think it boils down to connection a lot, because we want to feel seen, we want to feel heard, we want to feel understood by the people around us, by the world around us. I think that is one of like the fundamental human needs at the end of the day. Like we want to feel valued, we want to feel understood. And I think as writers, we have this unique opportunity to manufacture that for ourselves.
sure.
And when we do get those connections with our audiences, like it does feel good, because we feel like our stories, our emotional experiences are also shared by them.
I can see that. I don't write tear jerkers, and I don't, I have a kind of a lighter writing style, I guess. So even when I'm writing dark stuff, like I'll be like, oh, and this is dark. And then it's kind of like, but also it's kind of light. And like, it's not super heavy. So I don't know I just hope I'm making people happy. They're enjoyable reads. Like, oh, I'm so burnt out. I just want to relax and enjoy myself kind of reads.
I mean, happy is an emotional experience.
Right? Like they're not going to change their lives. They're not gonna, but they're gonna be fun, and they could sit down and read them in a day, you know, or 2 days, and just, okay,
Mm-hmm.
that was nice.
I love that because I think that so many writers think that they need to do the deep, dark tear jerkers when really they just want to make people happy. Really, they just want to turn people on. Really, they just want to make people laugh, you know? And I don't think that those emotional experiences are any less valuable than the tear jerkers, than the dark,
Sure.
traumatic, like really deep emotional stuff. And I talk to a lot of authors about brand messaging, like what experience do you offer for your audiences? And I think a lot of people are more inclined to be like, I want to change the world. I want to make a positive impact. And those are like such big goals. But at the end of the day, you're also manufacturing these smaller emotional experiences for your readers, whether it's happiness or excitement, energy, motivation, you know, and I think those are just as valuable.
I think I'm kind of like a Willy Wonka style writer. Like, here's my books, here's my stories. Have a little magic, have a little fun. We're not going to take it seriously.
Yeah. And I feel like that messaging is so much more attractive to readers than like the deep dramatic stuff of Dostoevsky, just to use an example, because that can be intimidating sometimes. It can be off-putting. It's like, well, that stuff is really heavy and I don't have the emotional bandwidth for something heavy right now. I only have the emotional bandwidth for something light and encouraging and cheerful, you know?
Yeah.
Because I think our emotional bandwidth is taken up by such bigger, serious issues, especially nowadays.
Yeah.
That we need that lightness. And I think that we are doing very valuable work by providing that lightness to our readers.
Yeah. Not that, I mean, I don't mind a serious book, but
there's a time and place for everything.
Sure. And my books have serious moments. There's, I mean, it's not all happiness, but definitely, you know, it's not going to stay happy very long.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, a lot of people like to write off bodice rippers and the more smutty romances, but for me, it's emotional regulation. Because I have a lot of heavy things going on. I get burnt out from certain things, and I need that lightness. I need that emotional experience to counteract what I'm going through. I don't need to continue the heaviness through what I read, because then I'm just going to get even more burnt out, which is kind of defeating the purpose.
Yeah. I want banter, and I want an animal companion, and I just, you know, and a love interest who's kind of swoony. That's all I want. That's all I need.
Yeah. And so many people relate to that. Many people relate to that.
It's like, and it's just as valid. It's just as valid writing.
Yes. Okay. Exactly. We're not lesser authors because we play around with those emotional experiences versus the heavier emotional experiences.
But yeah, I mean, it's not like I don't have anything traumatic in my past. I'm not trying to write, you know, I know some people really use writing to heal themselves or to express it. I don't have that. It's true. I can't, but it's still, you know, it's me. It's who I am. It's just sharing who I am with the world. And this is literally who I am.
Yeah. And so many people can relate to that. So what lessons did you learn along the way?
I've learned to always read your books out loud before you publish them.
Yeah.
Only made that mistake once. You don't do that again. I've learned, I remember my first book publishing, and I used tabs. I used tab in the in my Word document that I typed, and instead of like setting the indents, I'm just doing things how I was taught in school, and I'm like 40 now, so we were taught to use tab and to put 2 spaces after the period, you know?
Yeah.
And then you like put that into, and I was still using Kindle Create to do my formatting back then. I use Vellum now, but then it was just the beginning, you know, and I was learning just one thing at a time. And if you put a manuscript, like a Word document, into Kindle Create with tabs in it, they look fine on the screen. But when that comes out in an ebook, it's like indented like halfway through the screen. And you're just like, what? That's not what it looked like. I had to like redo the whole thing, take all the tabs out. And it was just it was, you know, especially when you're just starting, it was just so frustrating. And then just like,
Mm-hmm.
then you learn and you learn to do it better. You learn what to watch out for. I mean, definitely, I mean, I've always used beta readers, but I found, you know, like beta readers better closer to the subjects that I'm reading, who actually give better feedback and stuff like that. And I've learned to use ARC readers a lot more and stuff like that.
Yeah, go into that a little bit in terms of beta readers who are close to the subject and beta readers who are not. Can you give me examples? Like, would it be like parents, cousins, siblings versus like readers in the genre? Is that kind of what
Sure.
you're?
But also even just like beta readers who read that genre,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like you might find someone who's willing to beta read their work, but your work, but they're not into,
Mm-hmm.
they don't read that. So they don't have anything really helpful to give
Mm-hmm.
on like what more you need for that, or does this work? Or they might be like, well, that's kind of weird. And you're like, no, that's common. That's a trope. Don't worry about it. You know, so I think it's just helpful if the people who are beta reading it are your audience, right? They're the people who you're trying to sell to.
Mm-hmm.
And we can't always, you know, pick and choose, although you can, of course, hire beta readers. And we hired some for the co-op. We had a lot of beta readers on that one, which was pretty
That's a
amazing.
collaboration work in progress for people
Yes.
who don't have the lingo.
Oh yeah, sorry. The book that I wrote with another author that is not out in the world and may not be out in the world for a while. But we used like a ton. We used paid beta readers, you know, we used our own regular beta readers. We did 2 rounds of beta reading. You know, we did the first one, made a bunch of revisions, and now we're in the second one. And it's very satisfying, like to see that book progress. But I don't think I've ever had that many beta readers for a book before. But yeah, just having people who like sometimes you just get a reader like if my mom, she used to
Mm-hmm.
beta read for me. I cut her off my books when they started getting spicier. I said, don't read these. Look, you're not gonna like it. So just to save our relationship, maybe don't read it. Okay. And then we can keep looking at each other in the eye. Um, but she used to read them and she would catch like an occasional typo, which
Mm-hmm.
is always helpful, but
Sure.
she's not giving me feedback on the pacing or
Sure.
the plot points and stuff.
Sure.
So there's, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, those are all things that you learn along the way too, for sure. For sure.
And just having, I mean, not everyone has those people. So I'm
Yeah,
definitely,
I found all mine on TikTok.
yeah, all your beta readers. That's cool.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, because that's where the book girlies are nowadays. And I was like, hello, people that know what I'm talking about.
I think I found most of my through Twitter because that's where I started. And then I did eventually get into TikTok, but it's still I force myself to do it. Like I know that's where the books are, that's where the book sales are. It's hard. It is hard.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's a different platform, different norms, different frameworks.
Yeah. And to keep up that like the volume that you need to
Mm-hmm,
actually just be seen there. It's just like whew, challenging.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Well, what practical tools or strategies did you use to support yourself throughout this journey? What was like the practical takeaways from this?
Oof. Well, can you elaborate on what you mean?
Sometimes people say meditation practices, sometimes people say exercise, some people say, having a sense of humor. What kept you sane along the way?
Or just publishing and writing and
Yeah.
the whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
I guess just having reasonable expectations,
Oh, yeah.
uh, being able to be like, okay, you don't have to put out 3 to 4 books a year.
Mm,
Okay, making sure I have the right amount of time to get it done correctly.
that's a big one.
It's huge. And
Yeah.
then just it's helpful now the kids are in school, so having that time to sit down and it's quiet
Mm,
and I can just work. And having a partner who supports me is huge and I'm
mm.
very blessed there. So I mean, if I had to work a full-time job and do this, I'm sure I would still do it but it would be a lot slower. It'd be much slower.
I mean, it's all about priorities, right?
Yeah.
Like you just have to make the project a priority, which means that you do have to say no to things.
Yes.
Like that was one of the questions that I learned years and years and years ago that completely changed my perspective on a lot of things was like, if you're saying yes to this particular thing, what do you have to say no to in order to get it done?
Yeah.
Because you can't say yes to everything.
But it's definitely a lesson I've learned. I like to please people. I'm a people pleaser and I have a hard time saying no, but I have worked on it. Like, especially when people ask me, hey, you want to arc read this? And I'm like, how many pages is it? 500?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, yeah.
Oh God, I do want to help you, but also I don't have time for that, or especially beta reading other people's stuff. So I have to be very careful.
Yeah,
It's like it's a commitment, and as much as you want to help other people, you do still need to get your own stuff done.
absolutely. Absolutely.
That is hard. That is hard to
Mhm.
do.
Yeah, it's so funny since I've gone into publishing and have an author, people will just send me free books like unsolicited, and I just have a stack of free books that I've gotten.
Thanks.
And I'm like, I appreciate this, but do you realize how long my reading list is?
And that is definitely another thing that I have this year, this last year. It's like, you know what? Read the books you want to help support people. Just read what you want to.
Yeah,
Like, I don't have to read only indie books because I'm an indie publisher. You know
exactly.
what? I can read both. And those indie books I'm going to read, they're going to be in the genres I like. They're
Yes,
going to be books I'm
exactly.
interested in because I was definitely reading very heavily and trying to be supportive, and there's nothing wrong with that. But
Yeah,
it's like, you know what? Reading is supposed to be fun and it's supposed to be enjoyable. So let's see if we can do both.
yeah, yeah. It shouldn't feel like a chore, you
No,
know?
absolutely not.
Yeah. The Boys in the Boat movie that's coming out soon. It's a movie about the Seattle rowing team back in the Olympics in like
Okay.
1930. And it's based on a book. And so like everyone in Seattle's talking about it lately. And my dad's really into sports and stuff like that. And so he's like been really trying to get me to read this book for like years, years and years. And I finally had to tell him, I'm like, it's not gonna happen, Dad. I'm like, do you realize how many books are on my reading list right now? I don't care about the Olympics. I don't care about rowing.
Yeah.
It's
Maybe
just,
if you wrote a book that took place with any of those things, you needed to research.
yeah, yeah. I'm like, it's just not gonna happen. I'm sorry to be a disappointment, but it's just not gonna happen.
Like, nope, I read 100 books a year. I still don't have time
Exactly.
for that.
Exactly. Exactly. Well, anything you want to add as we wrap up for today?
Oh, I mean, just, buy Marrying Bluebeard. It's coming out February 1st. Buy my books. That's what I want to add.
Yes, yes, yes. And yeah, so like this is powerful stuff. All of these journeys have been very fascinating along the way. And the whole point of the series is to show that there's like no one route to authorship. We all
Definitely.
have different experiences. We all have different paths to this place where we are today. And audience, we definitely encourage you to share your own thoughts and feelings and insights and stories with us. We'd love to know how visions and goals and all of these motivations that we have impacted you in your own lives. So special thanks to Erin for joining me. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, thank you so much.
So please comment, like, subscribe below. Check out linktr.ee/clairjoyance for all of my links. And then where can people find out more about you?
epstavs.com has all of my books and
Awesome.
information and events that I might be attending.
Awesome. Yeah. And I'll make sure those links are in the comments and the description for easy access. And until next time, please remember that you all have extraordinary stories inside of you and you can share them. And I'm rooting for you as you use them to change the world for the better. Take care, everyone.